Hello everybody, and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4. This one is for the Empires and Ashes DLC, and we're playing some Mystic Alchemists here. So this build is utilizing the Tomb of Alchemy, and we're applying mostly Battle Mages. So it is a pretty classic Battle Mage build, but it has a really interesting focus on condition production and condition control. So this is a much more sturdy version of the build than I ever had it, and I wanted to introduce it to you. This build has been playtested on brutal difficulty, and it shines. I'm really just kicking everybody, so it works as intended. So let's get started talking about the race and or cultural traits. When it comes to the racial traits, I didn't go for anything too spectacular here. Arcane Focus is, in my humble opinion, a must-have for every Battle Mage build, because you have 15% more damage flat out all over the board. Keen-Sighted is another thing that I see as a must-have for any ranged build, especially since evasion has been substantially buffed over the course of the time. I really find this an extremely useful trait to have, and Hardy, well, Hardy is always lovely to have. Cultural traits. Also pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand what I picked here. So we got Powerful Evokers as one side trait. I picked this out of two reasons. For one, combat casting points are insanely valuable, and we're using here a lot of these battle mages and support units in our entire roster. Also, we start with a extra unit of our favorite types, and we gain 1 point of shadow affinity, which is just enough to get that juicy extra knowledge per hero kill, which is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful entry-level things. And it also offers you soft access to a couple of knowledge-producing things for almost no cost. Pretty useful and synergizes well into the build. And Gifted Casters, well, it's a similar venue. I personally think combat casting points are so massively important for this culture, and since you will be casting all the time, the less mana costs also are just a nice thing to have. If you have access to it, Mana Addicts comes in really powerful here as well, because you just keep on spamming a spell every turn anyways, so the drawback of the Mana Addicts never comes to play, but you have to have it unlocked. Now, this is all we have to say about that. Let's go into the tome section. So, tome-wise, as I already might have had you guessed, we're starting out with the Tome of Alchemy. This is so brutal, because the afflicted condition triggers a condition out of any form of damage. Since the Mystic Culture Starblade's passive trait is adding fire damage, lightning damage, and frost damage to your attacks whenever you cast a spell, you trigger this dot portion like crazy. So most enemies will end up being electrified, burning, and bleeding dot-wise, and they are often slowed. These are 4 conditions you just can apply by having the standard line Disperse, afflicting miasma spell all over the board, and it's also weakening the enemy, so you actually debuff the enemy right from the get-go. This inflicts insane amounts of damage right from the start, because I need to show you the numbers here. Bleeding is 4 points of damage, burning is 8 points of damage, and electrification is also 8 points of damage. And these things stack. So at the end of your early game, you will end up being able to just kill people by just letting them bleed out after you've hit them. Now, the nice things here are Mysterious Tonic and Anti-Magic Tincture. We have negative status effect Dispel on a 1 hex radius, which is powerful. This is just a nope out on any form of hot CC or any other debuff that the enemy flings at you, and Mysterious Tonic gives you a really nice free buffing and negative effect dispel effect for any of your supporters, and you will have a lot of these at the end of the day. The Afflictors are a necessary evil in your build. I call them a necessary evil because the Mystics cannot utilize ranged units too well, but these guys, they have Miasma Shot, and this is the only other source of Miasma aside from the spell. So I keep running one or two in my 3 army stack because they are basically preparing the enemy to be taken down. Because one big benefit of miasma shot, it cannot miss. So it's really cool. We also got to have an eye on material refinery, which is really cool because for me, whenever I play Mystics, I'm constantly broke, and this gives you sweet and tasty extra gold income. I mean, we all want to have magic materials after all, and Alchemist's Lab gives you the ability to build an extra research post, which is amazing whenever you found a city which doesn't have anything in its area where it can't build a research post at. This allows you to have a high research output even in bad city spots. Really cool stuff. And of course, we can apply Mysterious Tonic on our heroes too. At the end of this book, you will be flinging out buffs like crazy via Distribute Tonic. It's touch range, that's a big downside of it, but apart from that, you can have that on your heroes and your supporters. This is powerful. You dispel enemy effects, and you dish out tons of damage over time in just the first turns. You start with the spell. So, the other one that I picked up here is Evocation. After a long time of consideration, I took this as the most powerful choice, but I want to mention that you can pick Cryomancy or Pyromancy respectively, because both tomes synergize quite well into the whole strategy. I picked Evocation out of the following reasons. Lightning Focus is one of the very, very few early game Battle Mage unit enchantments, and Mystics just have so many Battle Mages that it's just a good thing to have. Fulmination is an amazing burst spell, especially when you run a Wizard King leader, which I strongly recommend for this build. You can have a big nuke just early on. Lightning Blades amplifies all of your good stuff that you have in melee, and it also amplifies the damage against people that are already suffering from your dot package. Evokers are really cool because they are a straight up upgrade for the Alchemists, and I personally love to have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 battle mages, so I always have something for my wallet. But apart from that, their only unique thing is the electrifying arc, which is, well, it is there, but it ain't much. Lesser Storm Spirit, I can't say much about it. It is a shock unit, but I rarely used it. One big benefit about it is a summonable unit, so you can use it as a sacrificial unit to keep your backliners safe, because mana is something you can produce easily with this build. The Channeling Tower acts just like the other thing out of the Alchemy Tome as a conduit that you can just build everywhere, so your cities will always be able to crank out mana and knowledge everywhere. That's a really, really good foundation for a Mystic build, in my opinion. Tier 2, Mayhem. This is where I felt like the game took off hard for me, simply because Mark of Misfortune is debuffing the enemy crazily. At this point, the enemies will stop dealing vicious amounts of damage when you focus them, and as you see here, pretty much all of the stuff that I run in my army is using this. Curse of Misfortune gives you the ability to apply that just on a terribly huge radius, and the Gremlins. The Gremlins are one of the most powerful throwaway units that you can have access to, because behind you just cancels out enemies' defense modes from a distance. This is brutal. You just can nope out a enemy shield unit, keeping the entire cluster safe with that, and they are also very, very good to be sent up front to die, because you just can't just resummon them. Infectious Insanity is also very, very powerful. I've kept entire enemy banners busy with that spell alone by ditching it at one melee unit, and then it spreads over to the enemy cluster if you're lucky. Best used against low tier units, because the resistance against status gets higher the higher the tier of the units. Soul Confusion, if you have it available as a siege project, it can be really amazing because your enemies go ippity-uppity and everywhere. Now, Mark of Misfortune, if you have powerful auto-attackers on your hero side, totally recommendable. The second tier 2 tome, I was torn between two choices, Fertility and Scrying. Fertility made the made it for me out of two reasons, or three actually. First of all, Animate Flora is another combat summon spell that you can keep running. It keeps triggering your star blades and it keeps producing stuff that the enemy will focus. Sometimes that's all you need to keep your backline safe and firing, and this is just very, very good. And the nymphs, I really like to have them because they can, again, dispel enemy negative statuses, so we have a really, really tight control over that field. Regeneration never hurts, it can be applied also up front of a fight, whatever, but seduction is one of the things that I really enjoyed about this build, because it happens that your melee units in the arcane roster can also lower the enemy's resistance, so this can kick in more often than regularly, so pretty nice little side thing. Blossom of Life is again a really powerful thing. 2 hex radius, 3 regen, I love it. And Revitalize gives you the ability to spread that over to your heroes. I personally love to swim in support, and this book gave me plenty of it because I didn't need more damage. The other alternative that I saw there was the Tome of Scrying. Scrying can also be very, very powerful out of several reasons. Guided Projectiles lets you ignore any obstacles in the path, very powerful. Again, we have a lot of units utilizing that. The Watcher is a summonable battle mage. This is really cool, because if you don't have the gold to get your spellbreakers running, your tier 3 battle mages, this can fill up your ranks in the battlefield. I like this option, and Mental Mark is also very powerful since it reduces the enemy resistance and the marking also lowers the evasion, but that is not so interesting for us in this scenario. We are much more interested in the resistance debuff and status resistance for the lower ridge of that one. Personally think this is a strong contender to the Fertility Tome, but I personally gave the Fertility Tome my vote, also because it opens up the tier 3 nature tomes for you, which this one wouldn't. Now, tier 3 wise, we go at two things. First of all, amplification. This is legendary for any battle mage build, and you would be a fool to pass it. Frenzying Focus gives your battle mages all of a sudden strengthening whenever they start attacking, also the supporters, but they are triggering this much less. Astral Blood gives your people all critical hits whenever spells get cast, and we do that constantly. Amplified Arrows finally puts some power into your Afflictors and your Gremlins as well. This is really stupid because it powers up parts of your army which were just doing their utility thing before, but after Amplified Arrows, they kick butt. I really like this synergy a lot. And Amplified Minds, well, if you have this ability, Knowledge Crank Out is always good. Chain Lightning, we do want to have the nukes, why not? And Amplification Pylon, well, it's a good thing to have. Everything in this book synergizes with your build, and therefore it's just really, really good to have. And you get to build a new conduit building as well, the one that gives you more of the juicy points, the one that everybody wants more of. And spell amplification. You should have it in your banner at least once. The other tier 3 tome that I find mandatory for this build is Pandemonium. Pandemonium allows you to utilize lots of status effects. The Chaos Eater can deal damage for each removed status effect. Since we are godlike at inflicting various different status effects, I've never seen a build before that was able to utilize the Chaos Eater that well. Because at the end of the day, it is a 48 to 60 point nuke quite easily around himself or on one unit, and it just heals that guy. It can be a bit tricky to pull off because I don't know why they have to be that squishy. I feel like this is one of the things I hate about the Chaos Eater, but Chaos Eaters do have Chaos Bolts, so they are, again, really good at triggering various status effects, and also the other spells of this book. Mass Hysteria is one of my favorites to just inflict random pain to my enemy, and Havoc Magic is, again, one of the most brutal steroids for any battle mage build that I know of, because Battle mages don't fire only once, they fire 3 times, so you'll have 3 rolls on that thing under ideal circumstances. Your supporters' attacks also turn into something really, really nasty. I love this. This is so good to have. And Vessels of Chaos is just... look at this. It's just a flat-out damage increase for your army. You have this triggered like most of the time. Inside Revolution can be always lovely. I really... this is one of my favorite spells to poke the enemy at, and yeah, don't forget to teach your own heroes how magic. A worthy recommendation on tier 3 here as well is the Tome of Cycles. So if you opted into the Fertility Tome, you have access to this one because you will have enough nature affinity. This one is amazing because of Projectiles of Decay alone. Again, all of our army is triggering this, or gremlins are using this, or afflictors get this, as well as or battle mages, and it now is another source of damage over time, another status type that you inflict. It's really, really good. The rest of the book is just really cool because it gives us some healing abilities that we won't be regretting at all. And since we do run a lot of in-combat summons, parting gifts can be really cool too. And the Druid of the Cycle is just one badass supporter for your build, because Restart the Cycle allows you to just do a lot of things, and the Druids hit quite hard, especially with this build, and they have one of these nasty Finger of Death spells. Personally love them because either way, either it kills or it severely weakens the enemy. But at the end of the day, they are darn costly. That's their big downside in my book. Okay, tier 4 wise, if the game gets that far, you can totally opt into any of the Astral Tomes. They both play quite nicely into it. Personally love to go for Astral Convergence if I can, because it gives you just so much different options to inflict pain to your enemy. And I love Astral Attunement because it powers up what my people are good at already even more. The Chaos Tomes are sadly really not too amazing. I looked over both of them and they aren't too synergistic with any of the things you do. Chaos Channeling would be quite nice, but Demonic Focus is totally lost. It only gives you a bit of an extra heal on your backliners. Gremlin Ambushers is amazing though, because it gives you a insane bonus because you can use it in enemy cities as well, and you get gremlins galore when you attack the enemy. It's really, really cool. You can summon a army out of nothing. You get a nice AoE spell for hurting the enemy, but all in all, nothing in this sticks too much. I didn't like them that much. I personally recommend to just stick to the Arcane Madness, because the Astral Mirror Tome is also really, really nice. It's more utility heavy, but personally, after tier 3 tomes, this build is actually where it needs to be, and you can also backtrack into older tier 1 tomes. I personally think that this build can benefit way more from more low tier tomes that give you more capabilities of controlling the enemy, or whatever you see to your liking would be better. Enough about that. Let's talk about the roster real quick. So, we're utilizing Arcane Guards as our early game frontliners, and again I want to point out that they have Sundered Resistance as a melee strike ability, and they are especially powerful against large units. They are the first to come in, and they are also the first to die because they don't have too much defense. They are good at magic defense, but that's about it. They bring you through the early game and they don't need to do much more. Arcanists hit a similar venue. They should be replaced whenever you can with something more appealing, because they are just the most baseline battle mage, but they kick hard early on due to the combination of miasma and starblades. We don't need much more than that. Mystic projections, due to the fact that we run the astral echoes with the mystic faction, you should always have a few more of these because they can excellently pick these up for you. Afflictors, I highly recommend you to research these as early as possible because they give you a nice backbone during the early game, because in the very, very early game, it doesn't matter at all that they don't receive Starblades buffs and all other things. They are really good at what they do. but they fall off and they turn into utility shooters until you have the amplification tool. Soothers. I personally am not the biggest fan of them, but that's only because you cannot control where the second proc of Soothing Breeze goes in too reliably. You get used to it, but spell channeling is just an amazing trait for them. So have at least one of them, but I personally think this is one of the weakest spots of your build. So if you happen to get something good in via the Rally of the Liege or your what are they called again? Your nymphs, they can also seduce enemy supporters, and you can turn them to your own units via mana after the combat. So, just as a side note, I personally think the Soothers are really weak supporters. Just my personal opinion. Spell shields are the ideal upgrade from your spear units later down the road. They deal less damage because they don't have the Giant Slayer and the Cavalry Slayer, so don't ditch your spearmen totally, but they have Stunning Flash, which comes in automatically as a point-blank AoE, triggering all the juicy different damage types that you want to have. And apart from that, they're good at withstanding damage. They don't need to do that much more because the action is happening in the backline. Spellbreakers. Oh boy, Spellbreakers. I love these guys. Star Purge alone is worth picking these up because you can fling out a cloud of miasma and then you put a Star Purge on it. Or two, or three, whatever. It is amazingly powerful because you can inflict so many status effects and you strip the enemy's buffs at the same time. These guys are openers, and they make even your tier 1 and tier 2 units hit quite hard because they can just easily disperse defensive buffs, and therefore, yeah, it's really powerful. The rest there, worth mentioning, attuned cast is amazing. Always open the fights with that because you get more combat casting points. Has a high cooldown, but whenever they don't get to do anything, they can make your get your fights into more longevity, and their attacks are just as powerful as a tier 3 combat mage would be. Good. We also run, of course, more units. We got the nymphs as well. Okay, I cannot look at the unit here, so we have to look over there where the units are. So the nymphs are tier 3 supporters. Their baseline attack does poison damage, which is pretty cool, and they also get to seduce enemies, like I said. If it fails, they get distracted, so you always get something out of a seduction attempt, which is really good, and you have Revitalize. Here again, this is a delayed healing effect, so take that into account. Very important, because you can otherwise be shot down quite quickly. And the gremlins, like I already mentioned, behind you is amazing since it cancels out enemies' defensive options. Spellbreakers, gremlins, and the enemy is just as vulnerable as he can be and gets poked out by tier 1 and tier 2 units regularly. I've taken down tier 4 and tier 5 units with that pretty okay-ish, as okay and fast as you can go with low-tier units, but it worked really, really reliably. They also have the displacement ability, so they can get a displacement once per turn, and quite often I put these guys out on the table to die, and they teleport somewhere and they don't die, so it's a pretty nifty thing. And this is your baseline roster. You will succeed with that due to many, many occasions. When it comes down to your hero skills, the usual rules apply. Summoning and healing spells are amazing. I really cannot stress out hard enough how good summonables are, and I run here support builds. I'm personally a big fan. So defensive training, endurance training, mysterious tonic for these guys, precision training, love that, and most importantly, spur to action is amazing. You can only use that once per battle, but it can give you that little smidge of extra damage when you need it, or that second activation of something. I just love it. It's up to you how you want to go. I personally think that you can also go to the battle magic path and do some nice action there. But yeah, let's move over to the strategy that you will run. So first of all, you are pretty okay off at the very start of the game, but you will be quite weak until you hit tier 2 tomes. So I recommend you to build your cities and expand your territory early on with the tier 1 tomes, but don't try to kick any neutral cities or AI enemies, because your build doesn't have as enough longevity and durability until you have the misfortune procs at your side, and the fertility does the rest of the thing, and you have a lot of regeneration while the enemy is degenerating. That's really working well. But before that, I made the experience that evocation and alchemy is good enough for the random map battles, but it's not good enough for AI empires or city-states, at least on brutal. I think on lower difficulties you should be able to topple them, but it isn't as powerful early on as other are, so I would strongly recommend you to go early on for realm expansion, tinker out as much income as you can, conquer as much areas as you can, and keep your losses low. Try to focus your losses on things that are easily replaceable, and get as many of those astral echoes as possible, of course. So beyond that, you want to have a high mana and knowledge income, and you should always look to get an extra gold income wherever you can, because the mystics are a costly bunch. Mastery wise, or what is this called? No, Imperium Empire skills wise, you got the big advantage of having a lot of nature skills available. So I really enjoyed the ability to grow large cities with this build relatively easily. You have very early capabilities of founding cities quickly. I love that. Materium, you have at least 1 point due to the alchemy tome, allows you also to get your cities in quite quickly, and sometime down the road you will even gain arcane artisans, which is one of the most impressive things out there. You won't get much further down the road than that, but you have a lot of things going on there. And when it comes down to nature, like I said, the food income is quite nice. I personally love natural recovery as well if you can't afford it, but it's very costly for what it does. Guardian Spirit is really cool because it gives you yet another throwaway unit to work with, and the Arcane Path is peppered with things that are just amazing for you. So I don't need to go too much into detail, because pretty much all of these are a really, really good fit for your empire. So you will gain a lot of that affinity down the path, and that's that. So feel free to ask away. There's not that much more to say. Keep your game safe until you hit tier 2, and as soon as you have 2 or 3 banners together and misfortune and the fertility tome available, nothing was able to stop me anymore, because I was just cranking out new throwaway units every turn, either gremlins or animated flora. Whatever the enemy was killing off, I was able to you're really well able to manipulate the enemy towards certain melee units of yours, and basically it boils down to the following: the more of these summoning spells you got, the easier your combats will go. Therefore, that's all I have to say for this build. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will enjoy. The Alchemy Tome is a very, very interesting thing. I'm not done with it yet. I need to do a Dark Alchemist build as well, because they are the ones that can fully utilize that weakening part. But the Mystics, with that damage over time aspect and their very, very easy access to multicolored damage, I had to do it, and it's really, really good. Now, comments down there, thumbs up would be appreciated, a subscription as well, and check out the description box full of links that I'd love you to check out. There is Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee. I would love if you'd give them a look. A big, big thanks to all out of you who already did and support the channel. Deeply appreciate that, but most importantly, I appreciate you watching this video up until this very moment. And I hope you will be enjoying this build, and thanks for being around. Next time I will be cooking up something new fun. See you there, and have a good one.